very happy to be here with another Clear Mountain Monastery interview. And today we're here with the Venerable Dr. Pannavati. And Dr. Pannavati has a very interesting biography, but we've decided to let you all do the research about that. So you can look up, you can look on her website, the Heartwood Institute, Heartwood Monastery in Henderson, North Carolina, to find out more. And we'll just jump straight into the interview. So, Venerable Pannavati, thank you so much for agreeing
Thank
to.
you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So, in myself having read your biography, I'd be curious if you'd be able to say what kind of brought you from. It sounds like you were an evangelical minister, a preacher, and coming from that into first the Mahayana faith and then into Theravada. Could you speak about both of those transitions?
hmm yeah, it's one as a pastor, what I noticed is that we were always groveling at the altar, needing help. I'm always singing a song. I'm looking for a miracle. I'm believing the impossible. And I tell you the truth, much like a mother takes care of her child, great faith has its process and it's working in your life. And so at that level, I received a lot of support from. Uh, if I were Buddhist, then I would call them the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas and the 10 directions. But now I just call them the heavenly beings. As a Christian, I received a lot of support. But I'm like, wait a minute. Why are we still groveling at the altar? When do we come up to the fullness of the measure of the stature of Jesus? Which was why I got into it to begin with. And it seemed like that was not happening. And that was the question that I posed within my heart and within my mind. I wanted an answer to that. When will we become like him? The very image of him. The things that he did, we would do in greater and greater things than this. And I did not see the example in the Christian community. And so that was my great wish. And through a series of circumstances, I I left, and people would ask me, "When did you leave Christianity?" In the beginning, I said, "I didn't leave. I just kept going." So, by whatever name you want to call it, I find myself further down the road, and I've learned as I have grown up in spiritual things how it's time to put away some things and take up other things. I felt like and so that's how I ultimately encountered the Buddha Dharma. First, I went to Unity, I think Unity, then UU, then Christian Science. Then, each time stepping away a little further, until I was just out there, and then I was into uh, shamanism, and then, and I had been a charismatic Christian. First, I was Baptist, and then and they were so given to hospitality, and so I learned hospitality. Then I became charismatic Christian, and I learned about certain things, and then I found myself just catapulted out of Christianity, but just a step out, and then I found myself way out, and then I encountered Taoism, and then finally my Taoist master. When I went to China to see my Taoist master's master, he said to me, and he was the 16th patriot of the Longman Taoist sect of complete enlightenment. Now we're talking about something way different. And he turned to me and he said, "Buddhism is for you." I said, "No, mm-mm. I looked at that before because someone had given me a book on dependent origination. And there was the wheel of life and this monster with teeth, and I put up the sign of the cross and I wouldn't even open the book. And so it took me, like all of these years to come back around. I think it was something like 18 years, to come back around to dependent origination. So my Taoist master says Buddhism is for you. I said no, I'm not interested in that. He said no, it is, and he took me to a nunnery in China, and he asked some of the nuns there to go ahead and give me novice ordination. He said, and when you get back to America, you find a Theravada Mahayana temple, and you go there. And so when I came back, I looked for one, but nobody spoke English at any of them. So I went into a Tibetan one instead, a Vajrayana one instead. And one day I was studying. Um, this monk came down the. He just came down the street, and he was in like a. It looked like a flaming red robe, not like the wine-colored ones that we wear, but this one was like flaming red. And he went into his bag and it looked like he was moving in slow motion. That's just the way my mind recalls it. And he whips out in slow motion though this book and he hands it to me. And it's the Majjhima Nikaya, right? now I'm used to, as a charismatic Christian, I'm used to all kinds of experiences, right? But this book, as I began to read it, did something different to me. It grounded me in a certain way. It rooted me. Some people need to be lifted up and some need to be tamped down. So I needed that kind of grounding. And so I went from uh, I went back. Let us say you went backwards. I didn't go backwards. I went where I needed to go, and I went to the Theravada. Now, of course, I'm Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, like whatever. I don't care what kind of yana you put on it, but I'm interested in the true Buddha Dharma, that which takes up the Buddhic mind and brings us to the fullness of fruition. That's what I'm at, by whatever name you call it. If you look at the Bahia Sutta, and the Udana, you will see where Bahia wasn't even a disciple of the Buddhas until just shortly before he died. He was asking, am I an arhat? Am I an overcomer? And a Devatar appeared to him and said, "No, you're not, because you don't have the methods and the instruction for how to be one." So he said, "Well, is there anybody who can teach me?" He said, "Yeah, go over there, and you see, and the Buddha's over there, and he will help you, Shakyamuni." And so he goes and he says, "I'm looking for him," and Shakyamuni says, "Don't bother me, because it's we're on arms rounds now. This is not the time for this conversation." He says, "Who knows? I might die anytime. You might too." He said, "So can you teach me now?" And three times the Buddha says, "No, this is not the time." And finally, seeing that his determination was strong and also knowing that his time was close, the Buddha gave him something. And he just gave him something so simple. So we think we need 10,000 books and we think we need a lifetime to attain. We just need to hear it and have a singleness of purpose and focus, and it is within our grasp. And so that's, I think I added to the story, but I always do. Um,
Venerable, that's
so that's how I came to this, and still with this, trying to get out of that. The Buddha said, when you get this right, you won't be with it, and if you're not with it, you won't be in it and all wrapped up in that. So that's what I am still pressing towards, the mark of the prize of that high opportunity in the Dharma for awakening in this very life.
Venerable. Thank you so much. That's fascinating. All the trips and the different teachers that you've had. I'm curious. I've listened to some commentary, listened to you talking and teaching about the Anapanasati Sutta, the mindfulness of breathing. Was that maybe one of the main suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya that you found most impactful, or were there other suttas,
Yeah.
or just even shorter things from that collection?
Well, I think that was the main one. I love it because the breath is always with you as an object, but it's not just an object. It's a gateway, and I like it because it's so simple, and you can always do it. There are many other practices that I do. Actually, I've come to understand meditation in a little different way, from a perspective, from a Vajrayana perspective, uh, meaning that we do the preliminary practices of getting the mind in a place that is conducive to encountering wisdom. And then we think or incline the mind in the way that the Buddha says a Buddha's mind is. you know, and we imagine or hold what if my mind was inclined in that way, what that would be like for me. And we spend time sitting and resting in that. And then we offer our gratitude for having that time to do that. And the more you do that, he said, whatever you think and ponder on becomes the inclination of your mind. So if I'm thinking, like, how would Buddha think about this? What would Buddha say about that? What action would he take towards this? Then I'm going to be inclining my mind more and more towards that. And I think I'll come closer to it than just having a discussion about it. So just taking that time out. But one has to be able to do that successfully. One has to have a certain degree of concentration,
Mm.
and so that's where the Anapanasati comes in. I feel for me and the students that I teach, and I maybe do it a little bit differently. And I guess that's okay. You use whatever technique that works. Somebody asked, "What's the highest or the best dharma?" And the answer to that is the one that you will practice. The one that you will do. Or what's the best meditation? Likewise, it's the one that you will actually do. And so, with the Anapanasati, he gave us an example. He said, like a gatekeeper, he doesn't care where the person comes from or where they go after they enter the city. He's only watching right there when they step from outside the gate to inside. He said, let your meditation, your focus be like that. So I'm holding or I'm steady, just experiencing that breath as it crosses that one threshold from outside to inside until there's no difference in outside or inside. And somewhere in that process, the mind doesn't uh, latch it down on that or this, on outside or inside or in between. And then you are somewhere but no particular where. And you start to experience and you start to know the vastness of the mind and a level of consciousness that's more than the ordinary consciousness. And these things, and it's hard to talk about them. And he said, you really shouldn't even talk about them too much. You should do the work so that you can experience them, and then you'll know for yourself, and there will be no doubt.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable Pannavati. That was the first time I've heard the Bahia Suttas phrasing of you being neither here nor there, nor anywhere in between applied to mindfulness of breathing. And that was just gorgeous. One really interesting point, you talk about how some people have to be lifted up and others have to be tamped down. I get the sense I'm someone who has to be tamped down a little bit. I don't know where you fall, Ajahn.
Lift it up.
But
Me too.
and one interesting thing is you've been pointing this dynamic in a few ways, how the Majjhima Nikaya and these sort of Pali teachings were that grounding tool, whereas maybe some of these broader conceptions of God or bodhicitta were somewhat nebulous or ungrounded, and then now also speaking about how your practice of mindfulness of breathing was a grounding element, like a crispness to that. Um, so yeah, I wondered if you would speak more about both sides of that equation, the grounding and the transcendent. So are there any other aspects of the Pali teachings and the canon that you find really you keep coming back to as grounding elements, like the Vinaya? And have you found that when you talked about the experience of mindfulness of breathing, you pointed to this moving through that single point of the breath into a broader mind. And so I'm curious also, like, has this grounding allowed you to move even deeper into that transcendent part about God or enlightenment or whatever you would want to call, or
Hmm.
the Dhamma? So
Hmm.
it's a broad
Yeah,
question.
yeah. One of my favorite suttas is 128, and this is a sutta where you know there was some quarreling and disputing at one of the uh, sites where some of the Buddhist disciples had gathered, and they were in residence. And he said, brethren, you shouldn't argue. And they said, we got this. And 3 times he encouraged them not to argue. And finally, and they 3 times they told him, you are a guest here, basically, and then he said something about hatred never ceases by hatred, but only by non-hatred. He didn't give a opposing view. He didn't say, but by love, by compassion. He said, hatred, non-hatred. So you have to look at what constitutes hatred, and from that you can figure out what's the opposite of that. That's what you should do. And so, but he gathered his robe and his bowl, and he went on down the road, and he ran into Anuruddha and a couple of the other monks, and he decided to stay with them for a little while. And he said, "How are you all getting along?" He says, "Oh, we're getting along great." And he says, "In what way?" He says, "Oh, we're blending like milk and water." Milk and water can blend, milk and oil separate. So he says, we're blending like milk and water. He said, well, how do you do that, Anuruddha? He said, well, I think first of all, how wonderful it is, what a great boon it is to be with my brethren in the holy life. So why should I do what I want to do? Why not do what they want to do? He said, and then I not only think it, I do it. I do what they want to do. And Buddha says, oh, that's really great. And then he asks him another question about how they handle their day-to-day affairs. He says, well, some go out to get alms rounds, another sets out the table for the food, another, even if he comes back and we ate all the food, he doesn't get mad and say you ate all the food. He just cleans up. Maybe goes to bed hungry that night because he got back too late. I don't know, but he was showing how what it is to truly blend like milk and water, and to truly rejoice in having good friends in the Dharma. And so he said, "Oh, this is excellent. This is excellent, Anuruddha." And he said, "And how's your meditation going?" And he said, "Meditation's going great." And he said, "Well, have you had, any kind of supernormal? Have you seen a light and vision of form since you've been meditating?" He said, "Oh yeah, we see the lights and the visions of forms." And he says, "And what happens then?" He says, "Well, they disappear." And so the Buddha said, "Why is that, Anuruddha?" So well, we haven't figured out the reason for that. And the Buddha said, "You should know the reason for that." He said, "While I was just an unenlightened bodhisattva." So there it is, right there in the Pali Canon about bodhisattvas. And while I was just an unenlightened bodhisattva, I too saw the light and vision of forms. He said, and they would disappear. But I thought, why did they disappear? And as I reflected, I realized, and he started talking about like 20 different things. Excess of energy arose in me, deficiency of energy arose in me, pride arose in me, fear arose in me, doubt arose in me. He named all, but each time that one thing arose, and he discovered what was the reason that time, he said, I shall meditate in a way, practice in a way that does not arise in me again. And so one by one, he clipped them off, until he was left stainless. And so it's so wonderful. But I think we just meditate, and everybody says, "Oh, you can have a good meditation, you have a bad meditation. Don't worry about it." No, he said, reflect and figure out what happened right there, um, and what happened in the meditation, and why it didn't take you to the goal of the practice. And then he said, work at correcting that. And so, but you look and see something there that I see a tie-in, and that's the way we live in our community. Because I know you all are establishing community. That's the way we live in our sangha, our laity and our monastics. It's a very egalitarian community. You know, um, and our nuns and our monks, you know, very egalitarian community. And so we prized all of them, the fourfold sangha in that sense, male and female lay, male and female monastic, as the sons and daughters of the Buddha. And we hold them all in equally high esteem. And we blend like milk and water, respecting each other's vows and helping each other keep the vows they made. You take a vow, You make a vow. You make a vow unto yourself. You don't make it to me. It might benefit me if you keep it because you're being a good and respectful person. But you make that vow to yourself. So if you break that vow, you've broken a vow that you made to yourself. And so we help encourage each other to keep the vows you make. So some take 8 vows, some take 10, some take 5, some take, the whole ball of wax. I mean, and in this way, we encourage each one to walk on their path to the extent that they can, to the degree that they want to, and we respect that. Hmm.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very beautiful. I love that Upakilesa Sutta that you referenced. Yeah, it's just wonderful. And talking about community and the fourfold Sangha, we're inviting and receiving Bhante Sudaso and Ayya Soma from Empty Cloud. And I know you're, in terms of creating community, Ayya Soma is, you're her kind of mother in the Dhamma, you're her preceptor. So we're very
It's
grateful.
really it's really good for them, because partly because he was in the monastery for so long, 10 years, and he's been very helpful to me, even when I had some nuns and the bhikkhunis couldn't get all on the same page because we're young in that. So every time I need something, I go to the monks because they're old and all of that, and he put together a platform of 10 monks, and they did the ordination done. So there's always a way, as they say, to peel a grape until we learn how to come together. So you can always be encouraged. But and so I'm very grateful, for them because they represent the wisdom of working through things from the inside. I represent the wisdom of working through things from the outside and bringing it in. I'm not. People don't bother me much anymore. Benefits come with age, and so it's 72 now. uh, uh, and one more year before I'm a Mahatera. I have some benefits, but uh, although it was sort of difficult in the early years, I did have the conviction that this uh, was path, and I had the strength and the courage, to walk it out and wait for some changes to come. The other side of that, though, is um, that we should be respectful of those who hold more tightly, you know, and not look down on them. The Buddha admonished us and said, "Be careful that you don't do that. You don't look down on." And in the beginning of my stepping out, I really did. I felt like they clung too tightly. I'm like, rules are for us. We're not for rules. You know, they were created to support us. And I felt that people clung too tightly to the rules, so much so that they missed the whole point. Why the rule was put in place. I tell you, everybody says, "I wish I could have been there in the Buddha's day." I don't think most of us really understand what that might have been like, because if you had an issue and that was brought to him, he fixed it by setting up a rule. Okay, don't bring that to me. If you do this, no more doing that. He just laid out a rule. No. And so uh, I think that some of us might not have been able to fully uh, appreciate and walk with him if we had been with him at that time. So we're here now, um, and I think it's one of the greatest times. Call it the Dharma ending age, but ending ing is the operative word. It has not ended, and so we still have a chance, right?
I have been listening to a number of your talks, and there's just so many good quotes in there. I just can't type them fast enough. One in this vein, which you said in I think it was an interview, it could have been one of your talks, is that practice is just so full that you don't have time to look at other people, and what you
Mhm.
just said now about, yeah, some people hold on to their views tightly and others are more open, but just allowing that, yeah, we can look at our own practice, and that's a really extremely helpful perspective. I have a question about, in another one of your interviews, you were talking about, probably some time ago now, but you mentioned that you were Googling like for another Black female monastic, and that you were the only one. And I'm curious if you could talk about balancing, or how to hold like identity, how to hold community, how to hold like history of
Mhm.
our history, at the same time as holding teachings of not self. Is there a Do you think those things, are they in conflict, or is there some way to reconcile them, or is there no conflict at all there?
Well, for me personally, there's no conflict. I remember in the beginning of the conversation, and I would be invited. Well, when the conversation started around POC communities, people of color um, communities, where they'd only have people of color in the Sangha hall, uh, and they felt safer then. And I was against the POC. I was against the separation. I thought we need to learn how to stay together and be together. And if our Dharma is not any more powerful than that, we should get rid of it and we should go and do something else and study something else. But I believe that the Dharma was powerful enough to break that down if we were um, if we were willing, that the Dharma has the power. But so that's where there began to be a little bit of a break between me and in general the African American professionals that have emerged in uh, in Dharma, or I'll say specifically in the mindfulness movement, because I wasn't using my position or notoriety to champion the black cause. And I got so many invitations to come and teach at the POCs from the, predominantly white Sanghas. But I would say to them, like, I'm not a black Dharma teacher, I'm a Dharma teacher. When you want me to, to speak to your whole Dharma, like the white ones, call me, call me back. And I wouldn't go to any POC, because I was saying to them, don't run, stay right there with them, you know, and talk. Don't separate yourself. And so I didn't fit with either group, but I did fit with the Dharma, and I just stayed with that throughout all of that. And so, and I think I was on the right end of that. Yeah, or as you say, neither here nor there, nor landing in the middle. Just nowhere with that. So what happened is over the years, um, you know, well, they would invite me, and the first question was, "How do we get more black people in our sangha?" I'm like, "How many do you know? How many do you go to lunch with at work? How many do you invite over your home? Over to your home for dinner. You can't just hang a sign outside of your sangha hall saying black folks want it, you know." um, I was helping them to see, this wasn't about being politically correct, and they were just trying to fix a problem, but that's not the way you fix a problem, especially not this problem. There was some kind of shift that had to actually take place, and we were not going to be able to put a band-aid on it and pretend that it did not exist. And we were going to have to go maybe through some suffering and some healing to authentically fix it. It wasn't going to be a quick fix because it wasn't a quickly emerging issue. And so that was my position, and I'm afraid not many people on either side liked it, but I sure liked it because I was at peace. I was at peace with it, and I didn't hold anything against anyone. I mean, like, I'm down here in the deep south. My family won't even come and visit me because they came from here. I was born in the north, and they was, "Why are you down there? We're not. We left, and we're never coming back." And they haven't. They won't come to see me, because they can't understand why I'm here. But I actually believe that I was here healing something, you know, um, because I didn't know what it would be like, but I know now. And I've been able to be with that, and to work through that, and it's all okay. So that's how that happened, and and uh, I'm really glad to have come through it, and to be able to tell that story, and so of course I'm not on the bestseller list of Black authors, Buddhist authors, and all of that, because I don't really think the blackness is the story. It's holding fast to the Buddha Dharma is the story.
I thank you so much for just the sincerity and wisdom in what you just spoke about and the integrity of your path. I know, there's people in my life, in our community, who the path, they are in love with the Dhamma and their path to ordination isn't clear. And that can be because of their gender as women. It can, be for other reasons. And what encouragement or words would you give them? I mean, it sounds like one of the sustaining powers that's moved you through all these years has been looking at your life as a gift and moving to the deep south as healing. What would you say to those who find themselves up against a pretty difficult landscape and yet are in love with where this path is leading them?
Mhm. So I say, just keep looking until you find what you need. They've always told us, like, you don't have to be a monastic. Well, then why are you one? You know, you don't have to be one either. As a male, and but I over the years, I helped ordain over 50 nuns in Thailand. Now there's probably 150 or more in and the way we have said it is that are they are part of a Western monastic sangha, female sangha. They just happen to be Thai, you know. And so all of their identification and ID cards, everything comes from my temple, and so there's like maybe 150 of them there. And then 13 years ago, I gave a novice, temporary ordination to 13 Cambodian nuns, and all of them at the end of the temporary period disrobed except one, and that one every year for a period of time she would take temporary ordination again and again, and I think 2 years ago, or I gave her novice, and last year or 3 years ago, and last year um, uh, she took bhikkhuni ordination. So I think she's maybe the second bhikkhuni, Cambodian bhikkhuni or something like that. And then what I did say is I won't do Westerners because Westerners, um, I don't think they have quite the diligence, or some of the privilege has made it not
Hmm.
so that they can't fully appreciate the life, and so I wasn't that interested. But I ended up with some lay people that I was just going to do internships with, and and 6 months into it, they were like, "Look, we want to take up robes too." So so now I don't know. I think I've got, I don't know, 6 or 7 Western as well, and then so Panyadeepa and I say that, and Panyadeepa and I ordained Brother Santi, so he has novice robes, and I'm thinking about what's going to happen with that, and only time will tell. Um, but I think I see another shift on the horizon, um, with with the one monk, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that.
Mm,
But
wonderful.
we certainly need more, and we have uh, and we hold our community, as I said, as Theravada, um, um, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. And as Vajrayanas, we have certain samana vows that have to do with replacing um, self with others, or considering others before we consider ourselves. And there's a lot of practices we do around that that really set you into a place of emptiness and no self. Where I think some of the Theravada practices that we have really, at some stage, reinforce a sense of self. So we like get the right idea, but if we can't walk that out, but we are constantly looking at the suffering and the cause of suffering, and the way leading out of it, we will never adapt the view, of no suffering, because we're constantly looking at suffering. And so, maybe that's a conversation for another time. But that conversation does need to be had.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable. Just on that topic of the largely the Theravada versus the Mahayana general inclinations towards service or helping others versus looking after one's own practice. And you were highlighting this practice of like actually exchanging, the Tibetan or Mahayana practice of exchanging self for others, or this Mahayana chant that from the very depths of my heart I will view others as superior, and practicing for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have things like in the Theravada Dhammapada, which is never uh, do someone else's duty if it will obstruct or go against what's your truest duty. And how do you balance this, or how do you advise others balance this? Yeah, working for one's own enlightenment versus, or in tandem with, working for the happiness and the enlightenment of others.
So the first thing I'll say is that when sutras are given, poetry is written, utterances are uttered. They're not for everybody all the time. So you need to know whether something is for you, for your particular mindset, for your particular propensity, and who I like to look at who he was talking to, and the subtle indications of what he was trying to get across. And it's not always what the big topic is, because it's the little foxes that spoil the vine, you know. And so I think that it's impossible, honestly, to truly be. I mean, if one were a monk, and they totally gave a 100% of their time to studying, to finding somebody to share the Dharma with every day, to, if they were working that like with all their heart and all their mind and all their might, I could say, yes, you could do that. But having been, among all of these years and being in monastic environments, I know that we're not doing that 24/7, with all our might, all of our heart, And so there are things that we could do to support and to help other people. And he talks about being lazy monks. The thing is, if you were working this like your hair was on fire, or that you were in a building that was on fire, then you would reach some level of attainment, and you'd be able to do more than just live in the monastery for 30 years or until you died. You know, uh, so I don't think that it's the difference that I think we're on the surface of it, of the ocean, looking at the waves and seeing these differences. But if you dive deep, there's a kind of stillness where the water's not moving. The current's flowing, but the water's not moving. And that's how I feel um, about getting. He says, put your own life raft on. But in another sutta, he says, you know, get with somebody that's enlightened, that's awakened. If you can't find somebody that's almost. If you can't find that, somebody who's at least heard the Dharma. If you can't find that, find somebody who's a good person. And if you can't find that, you just have bad karma. You know, so, so maybe that's life. So again, I say we shouldn't hold too tightly to something, but think deeply, like where you land within that, not where it lands on you, but where you land within all of that, and we'll find our way. We'll find our way. We will have the good fortune to have good teachers who have the wisdom to guide us at each stage of the path. Some teachings are for those of elementary understanding, some for middling understanding, some for greater understanding. Some are going to die tomorrow, so they need to hear it like this. Some, they're going to live a long time and they're going to go through so much. There's no point in saying this now because they're not going to get it, but later on down the road they will. I mean, it's just there's so much that goes with this.
Thank you, Venerable. The image you give of the ocean reminds me of those deep areas. We just spoke with a practitioner, Sister Mon, up at Birkin, who was talking about ta suchness again and again, and it reminded me a lot of that. And one thing I was curious about was looking to that deeper part of the human experience, which does bind us. How do you see the Dharma interacting with the current, speaking about a fraught landscape or a choppy seas? The current political moment certainly has that in so many ways, just um, red versus blue, all this, and people, certainly it weighs in their hearts. How does the Dharma interact with with that realm of people's lives?
Hmm.
And gosh, I have other questions too, but that's a pretty big one, so we'll leave it there first.
Okay. So, the Buddha said that when true Dharma leaves the world, the counterfeit Dharma will emerge. And we can know whether we, have true Dharma or counterfeit Dharma by the way, by the nature or the structure of appearances that arise before us. So there's many things going on in this world, but how do we see them? How do we hold them? What a level of suffering is present in them rather than understanding the true nature, of reality and recognizing the illusory nature of reality. So all of these things can be happening, and yet one who understands the Dharma is not dismayed about it. Someone can remain strong, capable, able to be a help in the time of need, and there and to have a correspondence, with a higher consciousness, a higher mind, if you will, but one who's uh, he called them ordinary, untaught, run of the mill. Or if your Dharma is not Buddha Dharma, then you're going to be disheartened by everything you see, cast down, depressed, um, uh, so attached and fearful about what if this happens, what if that happens, what if I lose this, what if that's taken away, and so we come subsumed and consumed with all of this, we uh, and we become impotent, and we cannot move, we cannot function, we cannot be of a benefit to the world. We don't know what to do, we don't know how to do, when, where, why. But if we stay grounded in the Dharma, you know. Um, then we can see that either there is a way out. If there's no way out, then we accept this. When we accept it, we know it's not permanent. There is the constant shifting. It depends on what everybody does, not just me. Um, but so things will come, things will go, and we understand. that that's the nature of impermanence, and that we are in that world. And I'd have to say, if you don't like this, then be diligent in your practice, because this is the nature of this world. And if you don't want to come, if you don't like that, then endeavor to not come back here, have a rebirth in this world. This is not going to be a utopian society. Just because of its nature. And so shoot for something else, you know. Shoot for the moon, even if you miss it, you land among the stars, right?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you, Venerable. In elsewhere, you talk about diversity versus unification. Like you like to emphasize the unification, what's similar, and just there.
You have been checking up on me.
Yeah, yeah. I got more. I got a whole list. Yeah, but there is, as Nisabho is suggesting these days, everything is so fraught. There's this tribalism of my group versus that group, the in group versus out group, my whatever versus your whatever. And as you were talking, you also mentioned just recognizing wise people versus unwise people. And I'm curious how you hold that. Like, the Buddha did say to associate with the wise and not to associate with fools. So how do you avoid like a Buddhist tribalism?
Well, at first, I want to say that, when you're a child, your mother might let you go on the porch and say, "Don't go off the porch." And then a little older, you can go in the yard, but don't go out the gate. Then after a while, you can go out the gate, but don't cross the street to the other sidewalk. Then you can cross the street, and then later you can go all over the neighborhood, you know. And so you have to know where you are with that. Like if you can't run with the big dogs, you stay on the porch. And so it's sort of a matter of knowing what you can accommodate and what you can handle, what you can be with. The unification that I'm speaking of is the ability to hold the truth of the Dharma as the fact in every situation, and everything that we see being a part of our perceptual, incomplete, illusory vision, so that the Dharma that you allow the Dharma to begin to change the actual structure of appearances for how you see something and how you understand something and how you work through something. And so when I work on myself, I can understand what's happening in this situation. I can clearly see where I should not go with that person because we're not going to be able to come to agreement. And if I'm skillful, if I've developed the skills, I can find perhaps a way of speaking that uh, supports uh, them in a way that they don't have to be afraid of me. They don't have to fear me, and maybe I can speak in such a way that I could slide something in. A little leaven's the whole lump that begins to dissolve, the staunch position that they hold, if not at the present moment, sometime later in the future. One plants, another waters, and another gets the increase. And so sometimes we're just planting. Sometimes we're watering what somebody else planted. And sometimes we're receiving the fruit or the benefit of what other people have done to help awaken someone or change someone's mind about something. So we shouldn't get all caught up in that. Which one I am? Am I the planter? Am I the waterer? Am I the harvester? Just do whatever's needed in that moment, and without any attachment to it at all. And then we will have done our job. And that is a way that we help. To me, that's a way of being a bodhisattva in the world. And the more you do that, it's almost like if something comes across your path, I think you should tend to it if you have the means. I know a monk, and he used to be a builder before he became a monk, and he was telling me how every day when they went on alms rounds, he would pass this. There was this old lady, and her porch was falling down. And every day he would pray that somebody would fix up, the post, just put the post up to hold up her roof to keep the roof of her porch from falling down. And he said, and then one day it finally fell down. I said, well, let me ask you a question. Why do you put the post up? you know. And he was upset with me for asking the question because monks are not supposed to help anybody. I said, well, that such a monk as that, there's nothing he could come and say to me, you know, because all it took was putting a post that you're building, you know how to do it, and your prayers obviously are not effective. So what good. And actually, that monk hasn't spoken to me since.
Maybe no
But
big loss.
but
The,
But I
the,
really liked him, and I really wanted him to think about something, but he was very set in his view, and they ultimately left that place because they weren't able to, develop um, the support they need. But sometimes you have to ask yourself why, especially if you really have a command of the sutras. Are they being walked out in your life? This whole thing's about cultivation. It's not about studying and being able to Paul parrot the sutras. It's about, can you actually live them? Can you walk them out? Can you walk them out? If you look at what the stories that were told about the Buddha and the things that he encountered before he attained enlightenment. I mean, he went through things in other lives, so we can't expect that we are not going to go through things. Matter of fact, my Vajrayana Buddha master said the fastest way to get enlightenment is to go through obstacles, and come out the other side. And so I must be, wow, I go through obstacles. That's all I'm gonna say. Uh, But after a while, you just take them in stride. It just becomes how this life is, and rather burn them up here and now, right? And leaves not much for later.
I thank you for that. And one thing I'm curious about, this sort of tension between putting the post up and not, plays into a little bit of something. I've just seen a sort of generosity in many of the Christian communities we've come into contact with. Like one cathedral's hosting us down in their basement, and I'm curious, coming from a Christian background, what are one or two things which you feel the Buddhist community could learn from kind of our Christian brothers and sisters? And just to add this question at the end, how do you work now with the idea of God?
Mm-hmm. Two good questions. Well, I learned a lot. I would almost say most of what I learned about understanding compassion and generosity, I learned as a Christian. Um, and but I see it in the Dharma, but maybe I only see it in the Dharma because I actually learned it and practiced it as a Christian. And in there, Jesus talks about certain things, do good to them that use you, and that despitefully use you. If one strikes you on one cheek, give him also your other. One takes your coat, give him your cloak too. All of these kinds of things, that I have practiced since my youth, and yet there was something I was still missing. So it wasn't around generosity. It wasn't around loving others, caring for others. That part I had down. I got that through the Christian church. But just really understanding the nature of reality as it is, there was still something missing. There was some chasm that I could not cross. And so I think I had a wonderful preparation to be ready for the Dharma. But I think that our cultivation is where we are missing, where we are missing it. And cultivation is what we think and say and do minute by minute, because, you know, the only thing that we take with us in this life, is the fruit of our thoughts, our speech, and our action. That's it. You know, that's all we can take with us. So what do you want to take with you? Is the question. You can't take your books. You can't take what you know about the Dharma. You can't none. He said our actions is the forward moving fruit, and that's based on our thoughts and our speech. And so I think that's the greatest one: learning how to truly care about others, how to truly be kind, putting others before oneself, and finding the joy and the empowerment in that, and gratitude, and uh, how it lifts one and sustains one, um, when you cherish others. And it's one reason why I like the Tibetan teachings very much, because they deal a lot with this. There's a lot of training around this, uh, and if we combine it with our wisdom, and taking refuge in in the possibility of awakening and the Dharma, then we have a way of escape from samsara. On the other side, with the Dharma, if we how can I say this? Um, I think that sometimes we don't under we have not understood the Dharma. I was going to say particularly in the West, but I'm not so sure in the East either. But certainly in the West, it's being used to support our ordinary life. So we're learning how to be happier with our things, how to be more successful, how to win friends and influence people, how to be a better sharpshooter, because of the power of concentration. How to, and it's not for any of those things. And yes, if you walk down a dusty road, dust will get on your shoes, just by virtue of you walking down the road. So some of these things you will inherit, but that's not the path. And so we really need to come back to cultivation and to understand what is path and what is not path. And there are not many teachers who know that and who can offer that.
Thank you, Aya. And do you have any thoughts on sort of how have you worked with the concept of God since?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, there's
So
two big questions back to back.
right, right. I got it. I got you. So we talk about the 37, uh, 37, no, 31,
37 Wings to Awakening?
37. No, no, no,
2?
1 planes,
30,
31. Uh,
I think it's 32. Some people, 32 planes of existence.
okay. And
Huge.
so, you have your, um, with us being here like the fifth plane, and then you got your David planes, you got your Brahman planes, and you got your formless planes, and you got, and then you got your pure lands, and then, and all of that. And so having been a charismatic Christian, first, I wasn't I was evangelical, but I was also a charismatic Christian, and that means I had certain experiences. You might call them esoteric practice, but I had certain things that So I know some things to be true by virtue of the experiences that I had, and I had a couple of very, very profound experiences. One when I was 6, and one when I was 13, and a couple of more later in life. And so I know something about encounters with heavenly beings, and how you can get direction from that, and those encounters, and how you can get assistance from them. So I know that they exist, and it's just a matter of whether I'm in a place that I can receive the guidance, or accept the guidance. Um, and so I think of God as being one of the gods in the God realm, and they talk about spontaneous arising, the spontaneous birth, and I think he's one of those who arose spontaneously and first one, so he thinks he's the only one. And I don't feel a need to pray to them, but I certainly acknowledge and respect them for the for their accomplishment. I think that they are worthy, of our veneration. And if you think of God like say the Christian God, he spoke of Elohim, and spoke in the plural like they are three. So there's a lot of things Christians don't know about their own faith. But if they did enough study, they would have some questions about their own faith. So I think it's perfectly okay for a person uh, who is not uh, who still needs the support of of faith in that way to call upon and receive uh, the support that comes from ascribing worth and value to the journey of those heavenly beings. You just need to know that that's not the end, that there's more to that. And whenever you're ready, you can embark upon the Buddha's teachings and find out what that is and what the path to that is, you know.
Thank you, Ayya. Do you feel that so you had a lot of faith and you love your capacity for faith. Do you feel that that faith capacity is the same somehow, that you were just able to transition your faith and the devotion that you had in Christianity, and then when you came to learn more and more about Buddhism, that same faith faculty just shifted to a different object, or is it even a different kind of faith?
Mm. Well, it's a different kind of faith. Again, it's like when a baby thinks that their parent is the only parent in the world. And then when they get a little older, or they find out the other kids, they have parents too, you know. So then they just say that my parent is the best parent in the world. And then when they get to be teenagers, they start becoming independent, and they don't want their parent around, and they don't like want them to make decisions for them. They want to do it by themselves. They want, you know, and then they have this innate um, uh, desire and reckoning to become fully functioning adults. So I think in spiritual ways it's kind of like that as well. So if I am at the stage and the time for being a fully functioning adult, I would be developmentally disabled if I was running around with a milk bottle and acting like a toddler. So do you understand what I mean? So one needs to know where they are on their spiritual path, and be there with that. And there will come the time that one outgrows the bottle. There'll be one outgrows the milk and they're ready for meat. There'll be one that outgrows the need for refuge in somebody else's completed work, and they start taking refuge in their capacity to complete their work.
Thank you, Aya, for all the wisdom and just for taking the time to speak with us. It's really a pleasure for us to actually make the connection. We've heard about you consistently from Aya Soma, and um, yeah, we hope someday we get you to come visit Seattle. So for what it's worth.
Thank you. I will. I was supposed to a few months ago, but um, the time wasn't right, so I did it by, you know, Zoom. But the next time I come out, I'll let you know.
Please,
That would
please
be
do.
great. That would be great.
Yeah, and we'll just stay on the line briefly, Aya, but for now, we just want to end the recording, and we're so appreciative of your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Al.